once again it's on. Y'all know what time it is. It's time to play some toss. Welcome everyone to episode 71 of the Tristain Sports Show Toss. Yes, it is your main man, T-Squared, Tristain Thomas. Thank you so very much for joining us this week. Typically, I would give a big rundown of what's going on, but y'all should know what time it is. Y'all should know what this show is going to be about, especially if you listened last week to episode 70. It is that time in the Bucks season where they have qualified with enough games played for me to finally go in on them. As I said before, if you listened last week, you know exactly where I'm going with this. The Bucks have played, at this point, coming into tonight's action, as we record this program, 31 ball games. You know what that means? It means they played enough games for me to really be able to go in on them. This episode of Toss, I'm calling The Buck Stops Here. And yes, I named it The Buck Stops Here. I'm saying it with a question mark because there's question marks about this ball club. Let's get right into it. We got to talk about them. I mentioned before, coming into Tuesday night's action again as we record this program, they have not finished playing. Currently 18-13. That is good enough for third in the Eastern Conference. I know everyone is accustomed to seeing them as first in the Eastern Conference. It has just been automatic domination. Not so much the case this season so far. 18-13, third in the Eastern Conference. Again, coming in tonight's action, 11-4 at Pfizer Forum. 7-9 on the road. Now, let me preface this, because everything needs context. And me talking about the Milwaukee Bucks needs context. I typically wait 25 to 30 games before I really start diving in and talking about them. I like to absorb it. I like to compare what I've seen this year comparing to what I saw last year. I like to compare the rosters. I like to compare what different players bring to the table, what the mindset may be. And again, I'm not head coach Mike Budenholzer. I'm not Darvin Ham. I'm not on that coaching staff. I don't really truly know what the thinking is, but I do know basketball. I could put the pieces together. I think over the nearly 6 years of us doing this program, you all have come to know that. And I thank you so very much for allowing me to be able to be that voice of reason. But I try to piece together, what are we seeing? What am I seeing? How does it compare to last season or the season prior? Where could this go? I like to absorb enough games and enough data and see if it all makes sense, to see if it all matches up before I really start talking about them, before I really start writing about them. I use that discipline within myself because there are so many times that I want to say so many things and just be reactionary. I have to pull it back, say, okay, it's only been about 15 games. We're barely scratching the surface of this season. This season, it's a shortened season. It's not a full 82. Bucks are coming off of the shortest offseason they've ever had. So is the entire NBA. You had the shortest preseason that you've ever had, 0 games. You've had the shortest training camp in history, the shortest free agent period. Roster overhaul period. All that was condensed. The shortest draft period. All of this was condensed because of the pandemic. So when you have a roster overhaul, as the Bucks did, and we're going to get into that a little bit, when you have virtually no time to get to know one another, know each other's games, know each other's spots. It's one thing to do film study on an opponent. It's a completely different thing when that opponent now becomes your teammate and you have to learn their game. They have to learn your game. You have to learn each other's personalities and how to work together. Completely different thing. But when you mix all that up, you get weird times in the NBA. You get some teams who have endured blowouts and given out blowouts that you would not expect. You had teams step up that you may not have expect to step up. I mean, look at the Jazz. We knew the Jazz were a good team. We didn't know that being number one in the Western Conference over the Lakers, over the Clippers, over the Nuggets would be how good they are. But yet here we are. When you have all of those elements, a roster overturn, virtually no training camp, no preseason, short off season, it's going to take a little while before these pieces get together and form a functioning team. And it's going to take a little while before they get any type of winning consistency. That's kind of what we're seeing with the Bucks. I mentioned before, they're coming into Tuesday night's action. They're 18-13. They're third in the Eastern Conference. Right about now, you're accustomed to seeing the Bucks with single-digit losses. Being number one in the Eastern Conference. Hell, being number one in the entire NBA. Because for the last 2 seasons, they've had the best record in the NBA. So let's talk about both sides of the ball. Let's start off with the offense, because the offense has continued their excellence. They were the number one scoring team in the NBA last season. Coming into tonight's action, they're currently number 2 in the NBA in points per game, 119. They're also number 2 in overall field goal percentage, shooting about 48% from the field as a team. They are third in the NBA in three-point field goal percentage, shooting at about a 39% clip. Bryn Forbes, one of those new acquisitions, one of those new pieces that I spoke about earlier. He's shooting a career-high 46% coming into tonight from 3. His previous career high was 42%. He is shooting the ball incredibly well. The Bucks are also first in the NBA in rebounds, which is a big, huge adjustment that was made by Mike Budenholzer, which we'll talk about in a little bit. First in the NBA in rebounding, 48 per game. They're 9th in the NBA in steals at a little over 8 per game. They're also 9th in the NBA in assists per game at about 26. As you know, ball movement is still huge for this ball club. Mike Budenholzer, a disciple of Greg Popovich, preaches ball movement. Ball has to move. That's how you're going to get the best shots. And apparently they're getting the best shots. The number one offense in the NBA. Budenholzer made a couple of changes to the offense. Now, everybody's going to say, Budenholzer doesn't make adjustments. Budenholzer doesn't make adjustments. But he made adjustments. This season, he has made adjustments. Even last season, he made adjustments. Let's talk about last season for a quick second. So, the first season, Budenholzer introduced that 5-out offense, right? So, guys are going to come down, in transition, and he preaches transition scoring. This was a top transition scoring team. Okay, when they're in transition, they're damn near unstoppable. It's just that when they get to the playoffs, all that ceases. You're playing the best of the best, and those teams have coaches that can figure it out, and they stop the Bucks from scoring in transition. But that's a different story that we'll tell a little bit later. They go out, they fan out, and if you have followed the Bucks, you know the Bucks, you know about the practice squares. You know about the quadrants. You know about the tape on the floor in the practice facility where Budenholzer wants these guys to fan out and stay out there for three. Giannis coming down with the basketball. He's either going to drive, slither his way to the cup, or the defense is going to build the wall, and you're going to kick it out to a number of those shooters who are standing in their quadrants, the 5 out, ready to sink a three. This is the kind of offense you knew you were going to have to employ with a guy like Giannis, who scores in the paint at a clip we have not seen since Shaquille O'Neal. That's not hyperbole, that's the truth. We have not seen somebody score in the paint at this clip that Giannis is scoring since Shaquille O'Neal. Giannis has shown a streak ability to hit from three, but he is nowhere near a consistent shooter from there. So you know you're going to have to allow him to do what he does best, which is get to the cup. Points in the paint. When that wall comes, because it does, you have confidence in his ability to pass the basketball out, hit guys in the shooting pocket, and those guys rise up and hit the three. If that happens, and those guys are making threes from the outside, you now have Grand Canyon-sized driving lanes for Giannis to go to work in. Then you become damn near unstoppable, and that's what we have seen for the last 2 seasons. Now, that first season, to get back to the point, Budenholzer employed that 5 out. Chris Middleton can hit the three. We know he can hit the three. He's threatening to have another 50-40 season, 50-40-90 season again this season. Barely missed it last season. But that 5 out offense didn't really work for him. It really wasn't catering to his game. It wasn't allowing him to be himself and to be the best version of himself. He goes to Mike Budenholzer and says, hey, look, I can hit the three, but I'm not the type of guy to just stand out there and wait for the basketball. I need to be able to drive, hit the mid-range jumper. I'm money from there. If a three is needed, I can hit that, but that shouldn't be the only thing I do. I can't be pigeonholed into that. If we are going to go where we want to go, I need to be able to have that freedom to go from three-point line, take a couple of dribbles, hit the mid-range. It makes us a much more potent team. And he was correct. Budenholzer made that adjustment. And you know what happened? He's an all-star. Bucks have the best record in the NBA again. Didn't end so well in the playoffs. We know how that story goes. But that was an example of an adjustment that Budenholzer has made from the first season to the second season. So now let's go from the second season to the third season. Instead of just strictly employing that 5 out offense, he's employing what I'm affectionately calling the +1. Budenholzer calls it the dunker area, where you still have guys fanned out. You got the threat of Giannis at the top of the key, sometimes at the wing. He's played a little bit more on the wing, a little bit. But you kind of have that runner, almost like the old Princeton backdoor. You kind of got that what I call that runner, that's freelancing. and able to be in there. By employing this dunker area, he's now allowing and putting an emphasis on rebounding, and you see that it's working. They're first in the NBA in rebounds per game, at a little over 48. You're giving your offense more chances as opposed to letting the other team crash the boards. You don't have a chance because you're playing 5 out. You got guys fanned all across the three-point line. They can't get inside to get that rebound so quickly because not every shot's going to be a long rebound. Giannis has long strides, but he's not going to get to every single rebound, even though he has averaged double-digit rebounds for a long time now. But that's one guy. You need multiple guys to get in there and crash those boards to give your offense a second chance at points. The easier, the better. The best way to do that is to be able to rebound. So by employing that dunker area, making that adjustment, by having those guys freelance, by having those guys be able to come in and crash the boards to give your offense a second chance if those guys from outside aren't hitting, that's an adjustment that's been made. So the whole thing about, Budenholzer doesn't make adjustments, I don't think that's quite true. Not at least offensively. Another thing that happened to this Bucks squad, we all know about the trade to bring in Drew Holiday. And we'll talk about that in a second. But you have other acquisitions. You got Torrey Craig from the Denver Nuggets, who is an elite defender. Let me say that again. He is an elite defender. Now, he's dealt with a little bit of injury, had the broken nose there, was out for a little while. Then, inexplicably, Budenholzer didn't put him in the rotation and was touting other guys, had earned that opportunity. And I mean, I get it, but then I don't, because you got a guy who can help you in an area of need, which is defensively, and you're not playing him. He is a plus defender. He's not one of those guys that if he gives effort, he could be okay. No, he's a plus defender. That was especially on full display last season in the playoffs when he was with the Nuggets. You bring in Bryn Forbes, again, who we spoke about his shooting, which has been invaluable. 46% from three. Now, don't get me wrong, he's had his struggles this season too. The Bucks as a whole have had inconsistencies, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. You bring in Bobby Portis, who I believe everybody believes that he has some talent. He's still young. He's still growing as a player, growing into his role in the NBA. What could he possibly bring to the table? Will it be good Bobby Portis? Will it be struggling, inconsistent Bobby Portis? Which one are you going to get? And to this point, he's been good. Nearly a double-double off the bench. I mean, talk about 11 and 7 off the bench. He brings good production. You drafted more shooting with Jordan Nwora, Sam Merrill. Those guys have barely gotten too much run. They had to go and put them in the G League. And it's not the Herd, because the Herd's not playing this season. I can't say I blame him. You got to do what you got to do with this virus. But I do miss him. But I digress. So they assigned them to various G League teams, called them back up, bring them back on the team. I think their shooting could be invaluable down the stretch, especially in the playoffs. Those guys have both shown that they can shoot in the little time that they had. And yes, I know it's small sample size, but it showed they showed they can shoot at this level. They can get their shots off, and they can make them. But I said all that to say this. The Bucks really, and it's interesting because the one comment that I heard about everyone was, oh, man, this is last season. Oh, the Bucks have such great depth. They got such great depth. They're so deep. And I kind of sit back like, yeah, they have some pretty good depth. But what good does that depth do you if you're not making shots? The depth that they had off the bench were a bunch of shooters, were a bunch of guys whose job was to come in and make those threes when Giannis passes that ball away from the wall. And none of them could do that. They couldn't do it in the Eastern Conference Finals against the Raptors. They couldn't do it in the Eastern Conference semifinals against the Heat. They just could not do it when it mattered most. You could do it multiple times in the regular season when you're not exactly playing the best of the best every single night. But when it comes playoff time, and that game slows down, and you are facing the best of the best, that's the proving ground. And that depth could not help you. It did nothing. You know who else noticed that? John Horst, Bucks GM. He noticed. And they ended up trading all that depth. And it made them very, very top heavy. Again, you go and trade for Jrue Holiday, who can do it on both ends on the floor, offensively and defensively. Now, he's been out with health and safety protocols. This damn virus, he's still suffering from it. You hope to get the full story on it at some point, but I mean, something is still keeping him out, and he's still under those health and safety protocols. Closing in on having missed double-digit ball games. But he is a difference maker on both the offensive end and the defensive end. You don't believe me? Check this out. In games with Jrue Holiday, the Bucks have the number 1 offensive rating. They have the number 8 defensive rating, which then gives them the number 1 net rating. So they're like the best team in the Eastern Conference with Jrue Holiday on the floor. Those are what all the advanced metrics and everything else are showing. Without Jrue Holiday on the court, okay, this is the games that he has missed. Without him, the Bucks have the 13th offensive rating. They have the 18th ranked defense. And their net ranking is negative, and it still puts them at 16th in the NBA. Those are games with and without Jrue Holiday. When you make yourself top heavy, you better make damn sure that everybody in that top is there and available every single night. Otherwise, you are going to struggle. And we have seen that with the Bucks. We have seen it with the Bucks. That is the risk you run. And it makes things a little bit scary. But we'll talk about that later. But let's talk about defense. I'm biding my time here. And it's not because I'm at a loss for words. It's because I got a lot of words, and I'm trying my best to censor myself. Now, you know we keep it truthful, opinionated, and passionate here on Toss. You know this. But what can I say? The defense, the drop defense, especially the defense that Mike Budenholzer employs. You want to talk about an end of the floor that Mike Budenholzer does not truthfully make any kind of adjustments? It's this one, the defense. He still employs that terrible drop defense that the entire league has figured out. It is reminiscent of the Jason Kidd defense. I said it and I didn't stutter. It is reminiscent of the Jason Kidd defense. That drop defense is antiquated. It does not work. You cannot sit there and clog the lane, leaving shooters outside and hope they don't make it. This league is not played the same. You don't have a couple of guys who can shoot. Shooting is not at a premium now. Shooting is the norm. If you're a big man, you better make damn sure you can hit a three. Otherwise, you're not going to see the court. You better be able to stretch the floor. If you're a shooting guard, you better be damn good to be able to survive that position without being able to hit a three. The drop defense does not work in today's NBA. Now, people are going to come after me for saying that. They were one of the best defensive teams in the last two seasons. If it doesn't work, then how come they were one of the best defensive teams? Yeah, you spit facts there, but what happened in the playoffs? When they couldn't shoot, they couldn't stop other teams from shooting. And now you're seeing, with a brand new cast, you're seeing the entire league kind of figure it out. Everybody has shooting. You can't sit there and hope that somebody is not going to make that three-pointer. They're not going to make team highs and season highs for three-pointers made when this entire league is predicated on shooting. That doesn't work. You can't sit there and hope and pray. You can't play hope and pray defense. And that's exactly what the drop defense is. It's hope and pray defense. We're going to clog the lane and they're going to kick it out, and I hope they don't make the shot. That kind of feels like what this defense is, that drop defense is. It truly does feel that way. And the thing is, you have some really good defensive players on this Bucks team. You have the reigning defensive player of the year in Giannis. Torrey Craig can get after it. Drew Holiday can get after it. Brook Lopez used to be able to block everybody's shot, but now it seems like he kind of dropped off from that. Chris Middleton can do it. You have some guys who can go and get down and put their nose to the grindstone and get it done on the defensive end, but you can't employ a defense that does not allow them to do what they do best. You can't play a hope and pray defense. I'll just leave it at that because I could just go in constantly on this defense, and it's just ridiculous. I just don't understand why you continue to employ this defense. Yes, you can get away with this defense against teams that aren't going anywhere. You can get away with it against a Timberwolves team. You can get away with it on a Kings team. You're not getting away with it in the playoffs. We've seen that the last two seasons. You have to be able to adjust in the game. Do something different. And to Budenholzer's credit, He's tried a little something different, but still, they employed that drop defense as their base, and it's caused a lot of struggles. Again, especially when you're top heavy, you don't always have your top players. Giannis has missed some time. Drew is still missing time. This season is a little bit, and I mentioned it being a little bit scary. It's a little bit scary because we're so used. And I'm talking Bucks fans all over the world. The past 2 seasons, we have become so used to seeing the Bucks be automatically dominant. They step on the court, and they could either win by 20 or they could win by 40. But either way, it was going to be a massacre. That's just the reality. Now, roster overturn. Sometimes you're missing one your main point guard. You got new pieces in there. You're not quite as deep as you used to be. Budenholzer's trying different rotations, and maybe he's not putting guys in the right spot sometimes, and sometimes he does figure it out. It all makes for uneasiness. It all makes for uncertainty because you just don't know whether or not they're going to be dominant, whether they're going to scrape by, or if they're going to just get blown out. You just don't know at this point. Welcome back to Earth. Because before they were in a stratosphere all of their own. It was dominance that we had not seen in a long time from any team. And now you're back to Earth on, okay, are we going to win? Are we going to blow a team out? Or are we going to be the ones that get blown out? It's that uneasiness that Bucks fans and those of us who follow the team and cover it to the best of our ability. We're so used to having seen the dominance of the last 2 seasons, and you just kind of thought that it would just translate over and maybe the bubble was a fluke, and no. Some of those ill fates of the bubble have kind of continued into the 2020-2021 season. But Budenholzer is trying new things. You got a lot of new faces on the ball club. You got a team that's still trying to find their identity, that's still trying to gel, come together. It's still going to take time. It's still going to take time. You could spend your time being mad about what happens in a regular season. And again, I don't really know how mad you can be. You can be a little bit frustrated. Again, you're spoiled by the last 2 seasons of dominance. It's not quite that way this year. They've kind of fallen back to earth in that regard. Overall, I think they're still a good team. But they're still growing, and they're still learning, and they're still gelling. All that matters is the playoffs. All that matters is the playoffs. Nothing has changed in that regard. You're simply trying to get better as a team, to win enough games to qualify for the playoffs, and that's where the real story is going to be told. Is being top heavy with specialists coming off the bench enough for you to get over that hump and make the finals? Is this deplorable drop defense that frustrates me to no end good enough to get you to an NBA Finals? Is it good enough to win you an NBA Finals? Does Mike Budenholzer have any more adjustments, any more noticeable adjustments, any more in-game adjustments that are noticeable that he can pull out of his bag to get them over that hump? Will the shooters on this team remember how to shoot come playoff time? Will Giannis not be so frustrated when those shooters aren't making their shots and he can't do anything against the wall? Those are all questions that can be answered, but they can't be answered until the playoffs. Because it is at that point you will be playing the best of the best. Night in, night out. And that's no disrespect to all of these other guys on all these other teams. They're professional basketball players. There are very many people walking God's green earth that could say, I am an NBA ball player. They are the absolute best of their craft. Whether you like them or not, whether they get a bunch of time or they don't, whether they average 20 points per game or 0.5, they still made it to that level. The playoffs are the only thing that matter. So in the regular season, what do I want to see? I think this adversity is a little bit good for them. And you had a lot of people saying it. You know, Giannis has said it, and Chris has said it, and I believe Pat Connaughton mentioned it. You know, you're learning how to play championship basketball because you're learning how to deal with adversity. And you hope it does translate to them being better in the playoffs because they face adversity. They have faced adversity the last two postseasons. And the result was not a very good one. Showed that they really couldn't handle it. Nobody. That means the players and coaches alike. But in this regular season, I want to see them continue to grow. I want to see them continually get better. And that means they have to be consistently good. I don't need the dominance of the past two regular seasons. It would be nice, and I think that's what everybody expects. I am not one of those people. Don't get me wrong, I had a great time seeing them dominate teams and just blow teams out the last two seasons. But what they were doing was just unrealistic. It was just unreal. At some point, they were going to come back to the stratosphere. And that season is this season. I want to see them win. Don't get me wrong. I want to see them get consistently better. I want to see their habits get better. I want to see their defense come together and gel with or without Jrue Holiday. I want to see this offense hum with or without Jrue Holiday. I want to see these other guys step up and be able to shoot the basketball in critical moments. I just want to see this team get better. And in the process of getting better, I want to see them win games. Again, it doesn't have to be in dominant fashion. If you could win by 2 or 3 points every single time and you learn something from it and you take something from it and you apply that knowledge moving forward and come playoff time, I'm good with it. But if you're just out there saying that we need this adversity and it's good for us, and you don't apply what you've learned, you don't take something from every single one of these games that you've dealt with that adversity, then I'm not good with it. Then you're just talking. And you're headed for the same fate you have had the last two postseasons. All that matters is the playoffs. So Bucks Twitter, stop going off on silly stuff. Slow your asses down. Understand that it is a process. Yes, the season is shortened, but it's still a pretty long season. A lot of ball left. A lot more opportunities to get better. The old coaching cliche, the old player cliche, you got to take it. You got to take it one game at a time. It's true. You literally have to take it one game at a time. Every game's going to present a different challenge. Everything's going to ask something different of you. The Bucks are learning how to give that in those situations. Because those are the exact same things that are going to happen in the playoffs. You're going to have multiple problems thrown at you, multiple adversities thrown at you. How do you adjust? How do you handle it? How do you overcome? And the Bucks right now, in this regular season, they're still learning how to do it. But in learning how to do it, they're still 18-13 coming into Tuesday night's action, third in the Eastern Conference. It's kind of hard to be mad at that. Well, y'all, that'll do it for me. That was episode 71 of Toss, Tristain on Sports Show. Y'all know where to find me. At the20double on Twitter and Instagram, at the number 2, the number 0, and the word double on Instagram and Twitter. Facebook.com/T on Sports Show, the Toss Facebook page. We touch on a lot of different topics there that we don't get a chance to hear on the show. That's Facebook.com/T on Sports Show. That's TON Sports Show. And of course, TossNationMedia.com, your home for the Toss brand of sports. Truthful, opinionated, passionate sports. It's what you deserve. But as I said before, it's time for me to get on up out of here. It's T-Squared, Tristain Thomas, reminding all of you to keep it moving forward. Always forward. Forward always. Until next week, so long from Toss.